Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Get ready to be inspired, hear success stories, and learn tips and principles for bringing out the best in everyone.
Hello, everyone. This is Deborah Rue, and this is Human Potential at Work. I am the CEO of Rue Global Impact, and we're really proud to work with corporations and UN agencies all over the world to include people with disabilities. Today, my guest is somebody that I have admired for so long, and he has changed our industry, and he's really changed the world, and he's got a whole lot more changing to do, and we actually need to, I think, really get behind him and fund and support the work that he's doing. I really, really believe in him. So I'm very excited about today's show, and it's going to be a little bit different. What we're going to do is we're going to have, he's going to talk, but we're also going to have a presentation. And for anybody that's listening to this as a podcast, we're going to give you a copy of the presentation accessible, obviously, so that you can follow along, assuming you can see the pictures. But Dr. Gregg Vanderheiden, who is my guest today, he also understands that if you're blind, you still can't see the pictures, even if we send it to you as a presentation. So he will be making sure that he explains everything that's happening so that all of the audience can participate. So my guest today is Dr. Gregg Vanderheiden. He is with the Trace Research and Development Center at the University of Maryland in College Park, and he's been in the field a long time, and there's those of us like me that are just huge fans of his work, huge fans. This is a man that has changed the world and continues to change the world, and it's very exciting to have him on the show today. So Dr. Vanderheiden, welcome to the show, and I would love for you to start by telling the guest a little bit more about who you are, because I just think you're amazing.
Well, this is my 48th year in the field. Started in 1971, and worked in the early days. We did augmentative communication. That actually, the word augmentative communication came from a chapter I wrote in 1979. One of the things we've tried to do always is to disseminate as much information about what everybody else is doing. So we did the first resource books, and we did Able Data. Marion Hall, invented it, and then we worked with her to get it first on CDs and then on the internet and stuff like this.
And Greg, just for a second, tell the audience what Able Data is. I know what it is, but
Able
just in
Data,
case people don't know.
Able Data is a database, and it's abledata.com of all of the assistive technology. It's like 20 or 30,000 things they now have in there. So absolutely, you want to be looking at that. We're also federating with them and 9 other databases for just information and communication technologies for something called a unified listing. And this is brings together a database from all over the world. Then we moved on to the computer access in the 80s, and 9 of the first 10 accessibility features in Windows were licensed royalty-free from our group. And we worked with Apple. They were actually the first ones to get them into their shipping systems in the 80s. And then we worked on the web and did the first web guidelines and worked on WCAG. And we went from AT for people to adaptive AT to make it so that you could access mainstream to universal and inclusive design. For another podcast, we'll actually be talking about next generation. What are we going to be doing in the next 20 years around technology and accessibility? But today, I want to focus on the fact that technology is not working for people today. And we began trying to work, the focus of our work now is all of those people who are having trouble using technology. We're actually have an emerging crisis, and it's of our own making. While technology is enabling independence and employment and participation for some, it's creating barriers for others. People used to be able to get an education, to be employed, to live independently without needing to understand or even use technology. Matter of fact, we grew up in a time when that was true. The technology that we had to worry about was a radio and a car and a television set. But we are now making it so that this is not true anymore. We are creating a society that requires you to be able to understand and use technologies. But we're not designing technologies that are understandable and usable by all. The complexity is just driving people back. And so what we're ending up with is a situation where we have made progress, we make special interfaces, we make special adaptations, but these are largely for individuals with higher levels of technical ability. So we talk about screen readers and people say, oh yeah, well, screen readers are great. Blind people can use them to access anything. And in fact, it turns out that, well, not so much. And it's really great for people who are technically adept and are able to use these types of technologies. They're not only can use them to great effect, they can actually be better than people who have sight at their jobs. But there's other people who are blind who they can't figure out the screen readers. They're too complicated. Any of you who don't understand how complicated they can be, just take one day, try and use a screen reader. I know it takes time to do it, so it's kind of like, say, use touch typing for one day. But when you just a little bit of experience trying to do it and seeing what it's like to try to navigate, and you all are people who have technical abilities and things like this. So there are people for whom technology just is a barrier to them. I have something I call TQ. It's technology quotient. It's not the same as IQ, because I know people that are blazingly brighter than I am, who can't use their technologies, but I can, okay? And so we have this technology quotient, and what we're doing is, the problem is that we're creating a whole world full of products that need you to have both a high IQ and high TQ, but especially high TQ. High IQ is not even as relevant as TQ. Now, people on this broadcast, we have higher IQ and higher TQ, and we have trouble with our technologies, okay? So what about the half who are below the median? And how about the bottom 20% of TQ and the 10% of TQ? We make it so now that you can't be able to go anyplace, you can't go anywhere. Even when we create accessibility features, they're buried in complexity. We make it so that it's easy to get at the products if you know how to use the technology. But if you can't use the technology, what do we have there? And this is one of the reasons we have trouble with cognitive. It's not just language level. Our interfaces are complicated. And when we add variations to them to make them less complicated, it's more complicated because now you're adding more options. And anytime you add more options and settings, you add more complexity. So it's kind of a vicious circle. So we need to be looking at how we're designing things, and we need to figure out how to make them so that they're simpler to use. And as we make accessibility, we have to make sure that the accessibility is easy to use as well. Now, we have features that make small screens large. We can, if you have a different language, we can make it so that it'll change and operate in the language that you use. We can make it so that the contrast can change. We can take the complicated menus in Word and we can make them simple. But how do you do that? Well, it turns out that the process of doing that is so complicated that most people just, it's jaw-dropping. And even some of the simpler ones, you have to go to the settings and you have to know where to go in the settings, and then you have to go to the right thing, and then you go here, and then you go there, and then there's like 42 settings, and it's beyond what people can do. Also, people don't even know about them. So you need to be aware of them, and people don't know these exist. As we've been going around, the number one comment first is, I didn't know a computer could do that. Even when we show them how, it's so complicated that users don't remember how to use it. And finally, features often have to be turned on in order for the person to be able to use the computer enough to be able to turn them on. And so you're caught in a catch-22. Right. Now, we had one woman come in to our lab, and when we come in, we always ask them, just because they're older doesn't mean they don't know technology better than we do. So I always say, have you used a computer before? And what have you used it for? And she said, oh yeah, I use it. And I said, what'd you use it for? And she said, well, I used it for email. And then I would Skype with my kids and grandkids and things like this. And I was using it to check my bank accounts and stuff like this and doctor stuff. And then my friends and we set up a Facebook group thingy, and that was really great. And I said, well, that's really great, but you said you used to. And she said, yeah. She said, one day I heard the kids in the other room and they said, the computer's all messed up for grandma again. Oh. So I figured, I've had my time, it's their time. So I stopped using the computer.
Oh, what a sad story.
I just wanted to die.
Yeah.
The impact of isolation and aging, and this person had, so much going on. But the problem was that she couldn't set it up. And when it was set up, she couldn't undo it when she was done. So we need to figure out how to make this stuff so that it's easier. And most of her friends had no idea, how to even set it up. And if she showed them, they could never figure it out again, kinds of things. So we've been exploring this problem with a tool called morphic. And the morphic is a tool and it does a number of different things. First of all, if you have if you use a technology, an assistive technology, let's say Alice uses an on-screen keyboard, and all she needs to do is to be able to just plug a morphic key in or log into a computer, and it'll instantly bring up her on-screen keyboard. And it's just the way she has it, the size she wants it, it's with the configurations and all the features she wants. And then when she's done, she just pulls it out and it disappears. Now, Elad, he uses a screen magnifier, and so when he comes up to a computer, again, he can't use it until it's magnified, but he can have it so that he does it and it just automatically zooms to whichever, and it's the particular kind of zoom that he likes, etc. And he likes this one, but others who are older can't make any sense of this because everything keeps scrolling off screen as they move left and right, and they can't find things. So we need to figure out how to deal with these things as well. So, and we can do it with JAWS and Read, Write, Gold and everything. So that's the first thing it does. And the nice thing about this is you can go to any computer, and when you sit down to it, it'll automatically set it up. So for her, she'd be able to sit down. She doesn't even have to remember passwords. We can do it so that it works with a password and a username, but we can also make it so that it'll work with just with a simple USB key. And you just take the little USB and slip it in, and it immediately changes. And I was just using USBs just now to show you these changes.
Wow.
One of the things that as we were going on to the community college, though, we found that very rapidly, this isn't just a problem for people with disabilities who use assistive technologies. And so we first had some other thing that we were using, and then we moved on to this. And it's for some reason, the Zoom text has taken away my mouse. So I'm now operating a mouse without being able to see the mouse.
Technology.
There you go. But good thing this is keyboard operable, right? So,
right.
So I can move along. So we can do things like automatically change the language to any other language. And whereas this is in Microsoft and you can do it, you have to be able to figure out how to go in, you have to figure out how to install it, then you have to figure out how to restart your computer, and then you have to go on. And for this one, you can make it so that it just instantly changes. And so somehow I ended up getting a survey here.
Say they were great. No.
Say what? Yeah.
Say they were great.
And so you can see it comes up in the other language.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so everything is in that language. So even the pop-ups and everything else. And then when you want to get it back again, you can simply change it either by using the control here again, or you can just come down to the end and just use there's a reset to standard. And this is one of the nice things that at any time, if you come up to the machine and it isn't the way you want, you can hit reset to standard and it'll automatically undo everything that you just did. Okay, so so this is sort of the kind of thing that we're looking at. But we can do many other things besides this. So we have the ability to do simplification. So, you know, one of the problems that people have is working with Word, and the fact that on Word it can be very complicated. So if we bring up Word, and we'll just open up a blank document here, and what we end up with is having menus, and there's like 11 menus here. They're all full of all of these different things, and we have people who just have them be, you know, way too complicated. So one of the things that you can do on the quick strip is you can ask for it to do Windows simplification. So I just hit Windows Simplify, and if I click Basic, I then see it'll immediately change.
Wow.
And so now all of the menus are much simpler.
And that's available right now in the operating system. You just have to know how to get to it, right?
Well, you can't do this. What you can do,
because I love this.
You can go in, you can right click on the menu, and then it'll bring up a list of 796 items.
Good.
And then you can create your own ribbon, and then you can go through the 796 items and pick out the particular ones that you want to, and cause them to shift from the left menu into the right menu, and then you can be able to access it. So, for example, if I were to try to create one, I can come here and I can go to let me see if I can do this without vision. It's a little tricky. So I want to customize the ribbon, and you get this. Okay?
Oh, I know that. I've seen that screen.
Right.
Okay. I usually try to leave that screen quickly.
Yes, that's right. And so then you can come here and you can see the commands.
Oh,
and you can
cool.
see that there are, if you look in this list, there are 796. And the worst part of it is there's apply, it says a line to top, a line to top, a line to top. So there'll be 3 of them that all say the same thing, but they all mean something different.
Okay.
And so what you do is you pick these and then you shift them by using the add button to shift them from the left menu to the right menu under the, you know, who can do this, right? So
right. Yeah, you're just going to struggle through and figure it out instead of doing that.
Exactly. So this is the deal, is to try to make it so that we can figure out how to make these things so that they would be usable by everybody. And so, yes.
Greg, does it only work with Microsoft operating system, or does it, because I know you said you've worked with Apple too, because I'm a Mac user.
Yes.
Personally.
So it will work with, we're also doing it on the Mac.
Okay, good.
So that it'll be up on the Mac very soon. As a matter of fact, I can, if I go back to the Macintosh over here, I can actually bring it up and show you the bars, et cetera, if you wish.
Cool.
So one of the things, though, that what's really surprised us is the difficulties that people were having. So they said, well, we come into the librarians and also at the schools, they say people will come in and they will take their USB and they'll plug it into their computer. And then they'll come look for a librarian and say, how do I find how do I find it? I don't know where to find this on my computer.
Right.
So what we did is we created a button on the quick strip. Sorry, I'm trying to do this blindly. Called Open USB. And what it does is when you click on it, it gives you the option to open up the USB drives. And what we'll do is it'll find the USB drive and open it. So that now right in my screen, I am taken right to the USB. And so now the person sees their resume, they can launch it, they can be able to access it. and use it. And then when they're done, they can come back and be able to, make it go away again when they're done. So these are the things. So go ahead.
How could you, is this something that you could bring into the employment setting? Because yes. I know that people with disabilities often are not being included in the workforce for a lot of reasons, but some of them is because of the complications that they have with the technology, their assistive technology, and the technology that the company's using.
Well, I'm really glad you raised that. In addition to being able to move to any computer and have it take your settings, we're now just adding the capability that it'll actually bring your AT there as well.
Oh, wow.
So now instead of at the library, you can only use the one computer on the third floor in the one room that's sort of like the little resource room. You can sit with your friends, you can be where your work is, you can sit down to any computer in the library, you can go to the special lab classes they have, sit down to one of those computers, and any computer you sit down at, if it doesn't have your AT, it'll get it, install it on the computer, and then configure it just exactly the way your computer is set up at home so that you can use it. Not only that, but because it has access to the full range, you don't have to go to the library and find out they don't have the screen reader you use, they have a different one. And that's really good. That's like someone come to the library and say, I'm sorry, you can't use your glasses, but here, you can use mine.
Right, hope they work.
Yeah, that's right. It's a screen reader, but it's like, how am I supposed to get my homework done if I'm wrestling with my screen reader? So, right. But a really important one is internships. We've had people talk about where they go to an internship and it's like 3 weeks before they finally get a computer. They get their AT, it gets cleared, it gets scanned, it gets installed on the operating, and they're not allowed to use their own computer at these companies. They have to use the company's computer. And so they're 3 weeks behind on an internship and they're trying to shine,
Right,
right. So with Morphic, you'd be able to walk in, sit down on the computer, and while you're off at your first orientation lecture, your whole computer could be set up, installed, all your AT, and it would be configured just the way you are. So when you come back from your orientation lecture, you're all ready to go. Same thing, first day on the job. We had a high-ranking officer in the Canadian government who was actually working in the area, was responsible for the area of accessibility, and it took her weeks to get her computer set up so that she could be using it. And she just said, well, if that's the way it is for me where I am, what about everybody else in the government? And I visited people that had been in their job for months and still didn't have their computer set up. So that's another thing that that Morphic allows. And these are things that, like the features that we show, are all things that are in the computer. A lot of them, some of them are AT, some of them are built in, but the people don't know about them, or they know about them and they can't use it. We had one teacher who was just complained to this, about the fact that one of his students would come in and turn on high contrast. And then when they left, if they forgot to turn it back off, he had to go in and figure out how to turn it back off again, because the other students were then coming in and complaining that this computer's all messed up for them. So having the features isn't good enough if people don't know about them. They're too hard to use, they're too hard to remember, kinds of things. So the ability to have one where you can come in and at the community college now, when they sign in, automatically it comes up, changes the screen size, and does whatever else it needs to do in order to be able to use it. So if this screen is too small, so let's just close this out, and the fonts are too small, then you can simply be able to change the screen size. So in this case, I can just take the come over and do a screen zoom and be able to instantly make the screen larger or smaller to match my size. So if I come here, I can just make it. And the nice thing about this is it's making it larger, but it's not making anything go off screen. So everything is still being, if you will, focused, resized, but resizing within the same screen so that the person's still able to use it. And again, as we said before, you can always, if you want to, be able to cause it to reset the standard when you're done and changing back all the different types of settings. So these are, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I have a hard question, so I apologize if it is, but
Oh, that's good.
this is amazing, and it's something everybody needs. My husband is aged, he's aging like all of us, and he has dementia now, and his ability to use the computer has really been dramatically altered. But I love how it will help everybody use a computer, but I'm just curious, for developing countries that aren't using computers as much, but they're using smartphones for everything. But at the same time, even though we're using smartphones for everything, looking at using my smartphone as an example, still, even though much of the society is using smartphones, we're still using computers in colleges and in employment. So I was just curious if something like this could ever be adapted for the smaller screens.
Yes. So two things. First of all, I want to come back to something for when you're talking about working with the trying to find it here. Here we go. So here we have the ability to actually create your own quick strip. And so on here, you can just move down to the features here, and you can pick out whichever items that you want. Buttons. You can see create your own buttons on the right side, and so you can make a button strip for someone that only has 6 buttons on it, and one of them makes the screen larger for them or sets up all of their settings the way they want. The next one could be for a very simple mail client. The next one could be for very simple picture sharing with the kids and things like this. So you can actually make it so that you can have a very, very simple interface that always stays in the bottom, so that as they start to lose the ability, they can still have the ability to have always there on, it never goes away, the basic functions they want, and including the ability to set up things the way they need to have it set up automatically for them. Now the second part had to do with the mobile and the computer-based. And one of the things we're finding in the community colleges is a lot of the kids come up and they've lived their whole lives on mobile. And then for the first time, they land on a Windows machine because that's what they need to use for work. And think about it. If you only lived on mobile, Windows is just like a nightmare of complexity. Because it's meant to be so more powerful and all. Same thing for the Macintosh. This isn't dissing Windows. It's any of the computer desktops are you can do so much more on them, but they're so much more complicated. And this is a problem. So we're actually finding kids, and the fact that we couple that with the fact the need to be using these technologies, we're finding the kids are failing out of courses that don't have anything to do with technology because they're being taught using technology and they can't use it. Or they have to be using the blackboard. They got to be using it's not the blackboard that with chalk that we know of, Blackboard, Canvas, or whatever. All of them, they can't figure out how to use them. And so this is a real problem. And we need to be able to figure out how to get people so that they're able to use it. Now, moving morphic onto mobile is also possible. We've done it. We moved it onto Android, except the operating systems, Android, iOS, have a security model where no app can affect any other app. Okay, so as a result, you can't make a morphic on them. However, Apple or Google can. So they can take it and implement it within their operating system, but we can't install it. We did it on Android, but to do it, we had to jack the phone. We had to break its security open, and then we would go into we would root the phone, if you will, and then we could put the software into the lower. We did it for experimental reasons and to prove it could be done, but we would never give that to a client because you've now destroyed the security on the phone, and then you're going to give it to somebody.
Right. What could go wrong?
That's right. So we did it enough to show it could be done, but then we just, so we're focusing on the desktops, and then we'll be talking with the companies later about.
Yeah. I would think as these mobile providers, as they compete more with each other, this is an opportunity for them, because you keep changing, say, the color of the phone. Well, we don't care about that. Well, the camera's a little bit better. Yeah, whatever. But you can do something like this that's going to make my device even more usable to me in all circumstances. Now you got my attention. So I think it's a real business opportunity for these device makers. But as you continue, I want you to answer a question that you've been answering along the way.
Yeah.
Why, Greg? Why did you do this? We know how much this is needed. And I'll give you just a little silly example. I've been a programmer and a technologist my whole life. I'm over a certain age, obviously. And when I went from a Microsoft operating system computer to the Mac and to the iPad and the iPhone, I was so lost. So I had like the opposite. And what did I do? I went to my daughter, Sarah, who was born with Down syndrome, who is a whiz on technology. And I was like, Sarah, how do I do this? And I know how to do it by my big self now, but I know why we need this so bad. But I was just wondering if you would just explore that a little bit more as you're continuing the presentation.
Yeah, I want to go back to the TQ.
Yes, I love that, by the way. I love TQ. I'm going to steal it, but I'm going to give you full credit for it. Full credit for it.
Please, steal it and spread it. Because the number of people, whenever I talk about it, especially people with high TQ, they go, oh, that explains a lot, or they big grins on their face, because they know of people also who have high IQ that can't deal with their technology. And it's like, and it's not because they don't care. It's not like they don't try. It's a talent, and it's like anything else. And we'll come back to that in a little bit. I focused on this because we actually formed a nonprofit called Raising the Floor. Because when we were working on the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, we got to the point where we said, when do we have to build it into the product, and when do we rely on AT? And so then we said, okay, well, if AT can do it, then we shouldn't be requiring sort of industry to have to build all the AT into every product, to every website. If every website had its own screen reader in it, you'd never be able to use the web, even if you're blind, because every time you went to a new website, some new designer would have designed a different way for the thing to operate. But I was concerned that the AT that you needed that was powerful enough to really access the rich text form, the rich web content, cost much more than anybody was able to do. It also required you to be technically adroit, and cognitive is always a problem. People say there's not enough cognitive provisions in WCAG, and the answer is absolutely correct. There are actually as many or more as there are for any other disability, but the problem is that cognitive there's no cognitive AT, so you can't just say, well, expose it to the cognitive AT and it'll do the rest for you. And we're getting to a point, and as I said, this other talk we can talk about, we'll get into that. But the whole thing was, how do we raise the floor, if you will, the basic technology that's available to people who are having trouble. And it's disability, it's literacy, it's digital literacy, and aging, of course, brings a bunch of these. And all of those is what we're trying to focus on. So Morphic started off as just moving their settings around, but then the question is, how did they get their settings? So Morphic now can, first of all, expose features that are hidden in the devices, so they're known and used. We have all of this stuff. You talk to the companies, they say, well, we put all these features in, but they don't get used. And the answer is, well, that's because they're buried. And you can say, I know that, but we can't put everything on the surface or else nobody will be able to use it, right? So that's a problem. It can also make commonly used features or even programs faster to get to and or always be shown so that you can always see them. And because you can customize that keypad, you can make it be just what you need or just what somebody else needs. And it's always right there and they don't have to dig for it. The older woman we talked about would be able to come in and just do what she wants to do and even turn things on and off if she needs them on one program and not on another program. And then she hits the reset to standard and it all goes back through when she walks away, it's clean. We can also have a person's settings follow them. So when they go between devices, we have kids who don't have a computer at home. So school closes, they can't do homework there. They have to go to the library or they have to go to the grandmother's or they have to go to their tutors and all those computers are not set up for them. So if they need to use them, so it can follow them around. And as we mentioned, the ability to have a person's assistive technology appear on the different computers is also important. And these are all, and then we also lets a person change between setups. Some people are more able in the morning, but as they tire, everything changes and they have to change their computer all up. No, they end up doing something suboptimal one or the other. You can have it so that for different tasks, different times of day, whether you're tired or not, you can change your whole computer in 2 seconds. It just goes and changes everything up so that it can move about as people need to. And then finally, you can set up a new computer instantly. So if you have an internship, you can have it set up a new job. We even had one person who had he was working just fine until his computer died one day. And they fixed it by replacing it with a new one. They said that's the way they always repair. They don't bother. They just pull it out, put a new one in. And he said, well, how about all my software? And they said, you have all the software on there that you're authorized to have. And he says, no, I don't mean the company software. I mean my assistive technologies. And of course, you know what the answer to that was. What's that?
Right.
And then he explains it and he said, oh, well, you just have to put that back on again. We'll send somebody over to work with you, And he said, I spent a year getting it all set up.
Yeah.
And can I get stuff off the old drive? Nope, we erased the drive for security reasons. As soon as we take it away, everything is gone.
Wow.
With Morphic, you set your computer up, you save it, and you can use it to set up any other computer, including one that replaces. And this is the real thing that we're driving. And it's not just for those who we think of as having disability. We are disabling people with the complexity of what we design. We don't recognize it. We think it's them, a problem they have, and it's not something we're doing because we can all use it just fine. And we also don't realize how prevalent or how serious it is. This is large portions of our kids are struggling or failing because they don't have the technologies. Now, some of us don't notice it as much because we have all these technologies around and we help them and stuff like this. And yeah, some of them are better and worse. And you start thinking of them as not being as good, but some of them are really talented. They're just talented at different things. And yet we make it that it doesn't matter what you're talented, you got to be able to also be talented with technology.
Yep, we keep deciding who people are instead of really letting them be who they are and really tapping into their abilities and the way they learn. That's why I love what you're doing.
Well, I want to leave you with a thought here. If the only way to get a job was to be able to do calculus, where you could use differential equations, okay, and integral formulas, you had to have a high MQ. Or what if the only way to get a job was to be able to be a great artist? You had to be able to have a good high AQ. Or you had to be able to compose music. You had to have a high MQ. Well, how many of us would be at a job center feeling hopeless and feeling like we can't make it even if we tried? And this is I know that I would. I mean, if I had to be able to
Me
compose
too.
music to get a job, I would not be, really whatever successful or anything. I would be at an AJC, American Job Center. It's just, why are we requiring that everybody have a high TQ? So, or even an average one, or even a low one. We make it so that you can't survive if you aren't at the top, because
Right.
those of us with high TQ, high IQ, we're the ones who are going to design it, and it's easy enough for us to use. We don't understand what your problem is,
Right. Right.
kind of thing. So those are the kinds of things we do. We need to figure out how to design for all levels of TQ. And we can do it with layering. And so that's one of the things you saw. For example, you could use the quick strip to discover some features, but if you want more contrast features, for example, there's a link you can click that'll take you into the control panel. So you can have it so that you can have a very simple level and then a more complex level, all right? And we need to provide an easier on-ramp. A lot of the kids and adults can do more. It's just that when they sit down, we throw it all of them at once. And so by having very simple, structured, we can allow people to get into it. And then once they get successful, when you play a game, the first level is always really easy, right? You always win the first level and you feel really great. What's the problem? People say they have trouble using this game. Of course, by the time you get to the second, third, or the fourth, all of a sudden you say, if you're don't have good GQ, game quotient, then you fall off of some types of games while your kids run right by you or
Yeah, that happens.
Again, it's not all kids. Some kids, not it's whatever. We need to figure out, because if not, we're going to exclude people, and not just from employment, but from all aspects of life. You control your thermostat, you can't get your health information, you can't, education, employment, retirement, everything. Now,
can't use your dishwasher. I mean,
right.
It's everything. It's everything.
We're putting digital interfaces on everything.
Yeah. And we're making people feel like they're broken and they're the problem. And that makes people just get that much more nervous about what they're doing. And we've got to stop blaming people for this. This is not a people problem.
Right. And then once they get into that mindset, it's really hard for them to get past it. And in some cases, it's just like saying, well, just learn to write music. It's
right.
If you just applied yourself, just because people who can do it, it doesn't mean everybody else you can. And so we need to be looking at that. So morphic right now, we've just finished the development. We're in pilot testing, et cetera, in libraries and community colleges and things like this. The next fall, we hit the end of, so you can always get funding for doing research and development, but as soon as you want to go to actually serving people, then all of your normal funding channels disappear. So we're in the process right now of trying to find the basic cloud infrastructure that it takes to run this and to keep track of the AT and get them all onboarded and linked so they all work together, which is really a trick for those of you who know about that, is about $2 million a year. And so we're trying to find a place to provide sort of the base funding for that. And then all of the community colleges and libraries and individuals can get it just for the sort of the incremental cost for adding them on. And it's all digital, so that's really low cost. And so that's the model we're looking for. And so that's where we are. We'll have a public release in the spring. As I said, then the goal is to get the base funding and then to go from there. But the impact, the numbers of people that can benefit, the people, and sometimes it's hard because some groups are not huge, but the impact is. For example, how many people are there with disabilities who use AT that are going into internships? And you'd say, well, it's not a huge number, but we actually know places that stopped doing internships because they couldn't adapt for the people. And for each one of if this isn't around, there isn't any other good way for them to be able to be up and ready for the first day of work.
I agree.
For
And I
people to discover
think
things.
people that English, for example, is not their first language. It's going to really, really benefit them. And, people, we're human beings. And as we live our lives, sometimes we lose capabilities that we had. And so I was talking to Rob Newhouse, the president of Siemens, and he was telling us that they have 5 generations in their workforce, 5 generations. And I've talked to a lot of other big multi-global companies that are the same way. And so it allows people to be more productive and bring their best self to work. And so I think it's really critical. I would love to see a corporation get behind you to test this out with their employees. So, this would be really cool to take it to that level too. I think there's a lot that can be done, but we just want to make sure that people know that this exists and how important this is. I mean, I've been watching you build this for years, and each time I see it, it's better and better and better. And so I'm very excited about the possibility. And I know that you and I are going to partner on this and other things together, and I'm going to bring in some of my clients to help you. And anybody that's interested in getting involved, please get involved. Let us know. Let me ask you, Gregg, how can people find out more about your work? And of course, you can always come to me and I'll connect you with them, but tell us about your websites and things like that.
There is a website, morphic.world or morphic.org, either one of them works. We'll drop you in and you can see the basic information about it. It's interesting because, as you pointed out, the impact is so wide. And one of the things that's really excited us the most is that there's this huge number of individuals who are not classified as having disabilities, who don't think of themselves as having disabilities. They just can't use the computers anymore. They're having trouble, they're failing, they're not thriving. This is the beginning of the process for doing that. And not just people with funding, but also the Quickstrip, for example, is programmable and things like this. And all this is being done in open source. So the goal is to try to get other people thinking about, well, this is great for all of these, but here's this other group that it could also be done for. Now, one of the other things I want to mention is that we actually had a couple of corporations step forward and say, oh, we'll fund the whole thing. And I said, oh, great. And
wow.
They said, but are you sure you want to? Because we have 2 rules. One of them is you can't data mine any of the information, and you can't use it to direct advertising, because otherwise I sell investment and insurance, and I would like you to send my ads to everybody who's easily confused.
That's ridiculous.
So we've actually on this
social impact, people.
Yeah, because people say, oh, you can do this. You have all this data about users. You can monetize it, and I'm going, no, absolutely. That's completely off the table. We're doing it through a nonprofit, and we not only have a 0 personal information share policy, but we're actually setting up an external council of privacy advocates and experts and in digital rights and disability rights. And they are going to oversee all of the policies and stuff. And then we have people inside working to make sure that the policies all get followed. So there will not be anything that will be as secure or private as this, because it has to for the kinds of stuff.
I agree. And we just need to, it can't only be about profit. It's got to be about, what are you doing for the people and the planet? Have some purpose. And I just wrote an article yesterday about tech for good and tech for all. And I was talking about what I saw when I went to Huawei, to Shanghai. And I was so impressed with the work they're doing to really make a difference in the world. And I want to challenge more corporations to step up and don't always think about, whoa, I could take all that information and use it.
We don't do that.
Think about making the world a better place, because the world does work better if more of us can use technologies. My daughter has Down syndrome, and we just got a whole bunch of different insurances. And I noticed that some of the insurance options were, they'll give you a smartphone. And I thought, now, why do you want to give my daughter a smartphone? She has her own smartphone, but the reason why is because they need to use technology, and many people don't have. I mean, there are a lot of people in our population that still don't have these smartphones. So they're going to give them to you because they want you to use them. They want you to use the technology, which makes, once again, what you're doing even more critical, because this is not going away. Technology is not going away. It's only going to get more and more and more critical to the way we do things. So I love TQ. That's a really great terminology. So I know that
we
I've
all
taken.
have people we know, and people are older, people are younger, that could make better use, or that bounce off of it. Even people who bounce off, iPads and things like this because they're just too complicated. We can figure it, and we've done some other work that actually reduces the entire thing down to just one screen with just 3 simple apps that are very, very, very simple to use.
Wow, to meet people's needs. Yeah, because people have different needs.
Yes.
Yeah, very exciting. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. And I have another show I'm creating on YouTube where we're talking about AI and tech for good and tech for all. And I'm looking forward to having you on that show to talk about what you're doing with artificial intelligence. So he's definitely the man to watch, the man to fund, the man to support. And I really believe that you're changing the world. So I really appreciate it.
Very good.
All right. Well, thank you for being on the program today. We will make sure we give his information and how you can learn more about this. But thank you so much for all the work you're doing, Greg. We really, really appreciate your wisdom.
Okay.
So
Well, thank you very much.
bye, everyone.
Great talking with you. Bye-bye.